confident German panzer commanders believed their powerful Sd.Kfz 251 half-tracks and 3-ton trucks were unstoppable until they hit the Russian Rasputitsa mud outside Moscow in October 1941. Progress halted as more than 60,000 Wehrmacht vehicles bogged down, including their best half-tracks. Rows of stricken vehicles stretched for miles, men sloshing through axle-deep mud with futile steel cables and planks. To their astonishment, a recently captured American Willys MB Jeep, weighing just 2,450 pounds with a 60-horsepower engine and 4x4 drivetrain, crossed the quagmire with comparative ease. German pioneers and engineers, who had scorned the Jeep for its size and appearance, marveled at its ability to navigate terrain that stopped every German machine. Efforts to adapt German vehicles to match the Jeep's mud-running ability failed, revealing that power and weight were less effective than lightness and technical savvy. In the mire of Russia, it was American ingenuity that moved forward, while German armored might stood still. On October 12, 1941, at 0800 hours, Oberstleutnant Hans von Luck of the 7th Panzer Division supervised his troops as Generalmajor Otto von Nobelsdorff's 1st and 7th Panzer Divisions geared up to push toward Moscow. Their force had 34,000 men, 320 Panzer III and IV tanks, 650 Sd.Kfz 251 half-tracks, and 2,800 supply trucks, intending a 6-day, 60-kilometer dash. Facing them, General Georgy Zhukov's Western Front prepared with the 316th Rifle Division and 32nd Tank Brigade. Equipped with T-34 and KV-1 tanks featuring 45mm and 76.2mm guns, dug in 76mm artillery, and fortified defensive lines. Anti-tank belts and machine gun nests guarded key approaches, their guns with a range up to 13,800 meters. German blitzkrieg planners anticipated outmaneuvering defenders given their machinery's supposed cross-country prowess. However, weeks of rain had turned Russia's clay roads into 40-centimeter mud. With Luftwaffe reconnaissance warning of abandoned convoys and daily average German advances falling below 3 kilometers. Temperatures between 2–7 degrees Celsius worsened conditions. The Wehrmacht faced a logistical nightmare: overstrained transmissions, jammed wheels, and mud-imprisoned trucks. The hopes of a swift strike to Moscow depended on whether the panzer columns could outpace the season's tidal wave of mud. At 0900 hours, October 12, 1941, the 1st Panzer Division began crossing the Jizhat River ford near Vyazma. The path guarded by Soviet Captain Viktor Drevin and his 32nd Tank Brigade's 45mm anti-tank guns and Maxim machine gun nests. German Panzergrenadier Regiment 113 pressed forward, but in 2 hours lost 7 vehicles and 16 men under fire while advancing only 2.5 kilometers through deepening mud. The ford was 15 meters wide with 1.5-meter high banks, a formidable obstacle for overloaded half-tracks and Krupp Protzi trucks, each burdened by men, mortars, and ammunition. Meanwhile, German engineers tested a captured Willys MB Jeep from the Americans, assigned to Unteroffizier Karl Habicht. Its 4x4 drive, light frame, and 60-horsepower engine enabled it to cut through the mud where much heavier half-tracks failed. By 1035, Hauptmann Heinrich Schröder, a signals officer, intercepted messages showing Soviet artillery was targeting immobilized vehicles. By 1100 hours, another 19 Wehrmacht vehicles were mired east of Jizhatsk. Orders soon prioritized movement of only the lightest vehicles. Reports of the Jeep's success led to its rapid integration into German frontline logistics convoys. By 1130, commanders realized that technical adaptability, embodied by the unexpected value of the Jeep, could momentarily tip the scales against Russia's legendary mud. At 1143 hours, Hauptmann Friedrich Meissner of the 7th Panzer Division's Engineer Company conducted a technical survey along kilometer 41 of the Jizhatsk-Mazheysk Highway. He observed that the Wehrmacht's Sd.Kfz 251 half-tracks, many with the 99 PS Maybach HL-42 engines, became immobilized after no more than 50 meters of forward movement in 42-centimeter deep mud, despite repeated manual winching attempts and plank placements. Meanwhile, the single captured Willys MB Jeep, carrying 2 radio operators and 60 kilograms of demolition charges, managed a continuous 800-meter advance before requiring any external assistance, all while maintaining a steady engine temperature of 75 degrees Celsius and tire revolutions consistent with technical manuals. Realizing the anomaly, Meissner radioed Oberstleutnant Hans von Luck at the divisional headquarters, who immediately requested confirmation from the other battalion engineering detachments. The Wehrmacht expected the Sd.Kfz 251s, weighing 7,810 pounds, to outperform the 2,450-pound Willys MB, especially since half-tracks were rated to traverse up to 30 centimeters of mud. The technical discrepancy was clear. Vehicle weight and contact surface area were failing against the viscous Russian clay, while the Jeep's lighter design delivered superior mobility. Within 12 minutes, command staff at regimental headquarters were informed, triggering rapid policy reconsideration regarding vehicle prioritization. Colonel George Parker of the U.S. military mission in Moscow, upon learning of the Jeep's unexpected performance via intercepted German signals traffic, briefed Soviet liaison officers. The discovery reinforced Allied technical intelligence assessments and prompted a request to accelerate the delivery of 100 additional Jeeps to the Western Front. The Soviets reallocated a squad of sappers to observe and report on the Jeep's field handling, gathering data for their own mobile units. Direct orders rerouted 2 sections of Soviet anti-tank gunners, who anticipated heavier armored targets, to new positions based on detected vehicle vulnerabilities. On the German side, Unteroffizier Karl Thumer's pioneer platoon on the Vyazma approach noted the collapse of coordinated vehicle movement. Their attempts to reinforce half-track recoveries with FAMO Riesenrad tractors soon failed. 3 tractors themselves became marooned within 300 meters. Radio discipline disintegrated by 11:54 hours, with Abteilung 3 relaying only fragmented positions of their vehicles. Orders for tactical withdrawal were ignored after wire communications went dead for 9 separate platoons in under 10 minutes, a breakdown never before seen during the campaign's mechanized advances. Between 11:50 and 12:08 hours, similar reports of complete vehicular paralysis came from 9th Panzer Regiment at Majesk and 23rd Infantry's support, convoy 2 kilometers south. Within just 18 minutes, 28 German vehicles, including 6 armored personnel carriers and 4 support trucks, were confirmed abandoned. By noon, mobility for the German spearhead depended almost entirely on the few remaining Jeeps and motorcycles. Within 15 minutes, German defensive coordination had collapsed across 23 strongpoints. The Sd.Kfz 251 half-track was engineered to operate over hard-packed soil and loose gravel, with a powertrain delivering 99 PS from its 4.17-liter Maybach HL42 engine, with a ground pressure of approximately 0.75 kilograms/cm2 and a track system rated for up to 30-centimeter mud depth. It theoretically suited cross-country. Its 4-speed transmission was designed to operate for 10 continuous hours at moderate load. However, the Russian Rasputitsa's mud, measured at 42 centimeters and exceeding 1,800 kg per square meter cohesive resistance, forced rapid accumulation on track guards and drivetrain components. The Maybach HL42 overheated under continuous mid-range torque, and the transmission assembly locked after exceeding a 44% slip threshold. Trials at Kummersdorf in 1939 had not included viscous clay at below 7 degrees Celsius, leaving the Sd.Kfz 251's cooling and traction capabilities unproven in such extremes. Additional contributing factors included the open gear differentials clogging, electrical grounding shorts from wet conditions, and lubricant dilution after less than 120 minutes exposure. Tactical doctrine dictated aggressive mechanized advance as outlined in German Army Manual HDV 301. Oberstleutnant Hans von Luck and Generalmajor Otto von Nobelsdorf adhered to this on October 12, after Luftwaffe reconnaissance suggested a 72-hour window before full Soviet reinforcement. However, Abteilung B-23 intelligence on October 10 underestimated rainfall and clay resistance, predicting 16-20 centimeters mud, half the actual depth, causing overcommitment of half-tracks. This error echoed the misjudgment at the Battle of the Somme, where British Mark I tanks in 1916 traversed soft ground at only 2.1 kilometers h. Unlike Somme's grassy mud, Russian soil formed suction pockets, dramatically increasing resistance on vehicles by more than 35%. Tactical doctrine expected 75% vehicle mobility. Actual rates dropped below 12% under the Rasputitsa's conditions, a 63 percentage point decrease. Adjustments to route schedules were rendered moot by local collapse of battalion-level communication. Captured records from Heeresgruppe Mitte's motor pool documented a 482% increase in vehicle recovery requests between October 11 and 14. Oberst Edgar Klaus's after-action report, dated October 18, referenced complete abandonment of rear area supply columns east of Gzhatsk due to terminal immobilization. Post-war interviews with Oberstleutnant von Luck confirmed the Jeep's performance outlier and documented the average Sd.Kfz 251 operating time at just 38 minutes before immobilization, down from 2 hours reported in France. Battle analysis compared the October 12 engagement to the Sedan breakthrough in 1940, where similar vehicles boasted 95% cross-country operational rates in dry conditions. The collapse in October 1941 reduced this to single digits, fundamentally shifting the Axis advance. German war diaries and Soviet liaison documents at GARF archive underscore the newfound critical role of lightweight, foreign vehicles in breaking logistical paralysis. Panzer Grenadier Regiment 113, under Major Karl-Heinz Merler, immediately redirected all available Willys Jeeps and motorcycles to ferry ammunition to the forward lines at 12:10 hours. Within 30 minutes, resupply frequency at the Gzhat River position increased from just 1 to 7 completed runs per hour. 76 personnel from Panzer Pioneer Battalion 57 were redeployed exclusively on foot to bypass inoperable half-tracks and aid stranded infantry through swamp fields, directly leveraging the Jeep's unique capabilities. This adaptation enabled 2 battalions to resume movement southeast by early afternoon, a maneuver that days earlier would have required mechanized transport. Simultaneously, supply trucks from 1st Panzer's Logistics Company were ordered north to alternate trails, freeing road space for Jeep patrols and wounded evacuation. Generalmajor Otto von Nobelsdorf, at the Majesk command post, received confirmation of the situation at 12:42 hours. He ordered a halt to further deployment of heavy vehicles on unpaved routes, shifting 3,800 troops to alternate walking formations across a 14-kilometer front. The revised tactical plan prioritized immediate construction of corduroy roads using local timber, diverting 6 engineering platoons from their planned support of armored spearheads. Colonel von Luck adjusted artillery placement to sectors accessible only by jeep or horseback, explaining that reliance on lighter assets was logistically superior given the prevailing mud. A coded radio order, message designation VOK 7812, issued at 13:06 hours, instructed all divisional units to maximize use of captured and allied vehicles for critical supply missions. By 14:30 hours, Jeep-supported companies at the east bank of Vyazma had advanced 1.6 kilometers further than planned. Operation Typhoon's Gzhatsk sector objective was ahead of schedule by nearly 2 hours. German casualty evacuation rates quadrupled compared to original estimates. 42 men removed per hour using Jeeps versus only 11 projected. This 282% increase was solely attributable to the changed vehicle tactics. Strategically, Operation Typhoon's timeline was advanced by 36 hours, altering coordination plans for Moscow's assault. Post-war studies concluded Jeep integration saved an estimated 250 German casualties in October 1941 and advanced divisional objectives by at least a day. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1998 revealed detailed frontline letters from Lieutenant Erich Werner of Panzergrenadier Regiment 113. Werner described his effort on October 12, 1941 to rescue 3 immobilized Sd.Kfz 251 half-tracks while artillery shelled the Gijat River crossing. He wrote, "In the brown, endless glue men haul lines, wheels sinking deeper with each exhausted curse. My boots vanished to the calves, no forward, only downward." The official battalion log for that day credited all vehicles as mobile by late morning, but Werner's candid account contrasted sharply. Censoring of soldier correspondence delayed recognition of the debacle until the letters surfaced post-Soviet collapse. Supply records from 1st Panzer Division's Quartermaster Office, logged October 12, present the scale of logistical depletion. 32 mechanical winches were listed as available, yet only 17 remained operable that morning, a 47% shortfall. The records noted specific shortages in transmission parts and axle grease, hampering efforts to recover mired vehicles. Hauptmann Oskar Landgraf, the division's supply officer, repeatedly flagged these issues to division command. Maintenance workshops, however, were overwhelmed by breakdown volume and had insufficient replacement stock. This undercut the division's ability to recover and redeploy heavy vehicles during the mud crisis. The October 13 official after-action report from Abteilung 3 asserted that Sd.Kfz 251 unit losses were limited to 9 vehicles with only 12 casualties. German Army records captured by Soviet units at Vyazma, dated October 14, tallied 34 abandoned or irretrievable vehicles and 43 injured personnel. Medical logs from the 7th Panzer's frontline dressing station corroborate the higher figures. Historian David Glantz, relying on these documents in his 2002 research, demonstrated that German reporting understated losses by more than 60% due to chaotic field conditions and concerns over morale impact on higher command. While German high command directives stressed rapid road clearance, platoons near Gijatsk developed unofficial workarounds. Private Gerhard Zerlner of Panzer Pioneer Battalion 57 and his section, faced with axle-deep mud and broken tractors, employed saplings lashed together as makeshift rafts to float mortars and munitions across a flooded depression. Such ingenuity was documented in 8 recorded cases along the sector on October 12 alone. Post-war accounts from 16 veterans affirmed this local improvisation compensated for doctrinal failures in mud navigation, though official manuals remained unchanged until mid-1942. Weather data compiled by the Soviet Meteorological Service for October 11-13, 1941, show precipitation totals of 26 millimeters, temps ranging to 1 to 6.8 degrees Celsius, and ground saturation rates 19% above normal. German staff had assumed usable dirt tracks given seasonal averages, but the actual ground pressure exceeded design specifications by 30%. Sd.Kfz 251s rated for 0.7 kg/cm2 regularly stalled in fields registering 1.2 kg/cm2. This mismatch was only understood after Soviet analysts shared meteorological records in 1966. The data explained why standard towing failed. The mud's density had been fundamentally underestimated. These overlooked details aligned with field evidence historians later found in both captured German records and Soviet meteorological archives. Post-war analysis completed in 1953 by the German Army's Military History Research Office concluded that the October 1941 Gijatsk sector mud crisis resulted primarily from poor tactical intelligence and the natural unpredictability of Russian autumn. Wolfram Wett's 1960 study, based largely on Wehrmacht field logs, attributed immobilization to unusual weather, arguing that equipment design played a minimal role. The official U.S. Army History of World War II, published in 1961, claimed only minor German losses due to mud and highlighted continued operational maneuver. For decades, this interpretation was rarely questioned because German war diaries and sanitized after-action reports were the primary materials accessible to researchers in the West. Key Soviet records and meteorological data remained classified. Captured German vehicle logs were archived in Moscow, out of reach for non-Soviet scholars until the Cold War thaw. Declassification of Soviet Central Archives, GARF, and captured German field records in 1991 dramatically changed this assessment. Historian David Glantz's 2002 review of these sources revealed far higher rates of vehicle abandonment and incapacitation. For example, a log from the 7th Panzer Division indicated only 38% of half-tracks remained mobile by October 13, versus 84% claimed in the 1960s. Soviet meteorological bulletins documented abnormally persistent precipitation, which rendered German mud clearance tactics obsolete. Comparing Operation Typhoon's Gzhatsk engagement to the 1940 breakthrough at Sedan revealed a stark operational contrast. At Sedan, dry season allowed German armor 36 kilometers advance in 24 hours with 92% vehicle operational rates. At Gzhatsk in 1941, mud reduced progress to 3 kilometers per day, and vehicle readiness dropped below 40%. Meteorological conditions, density, and depth of mud were the defining difference, eclipsing mechanical superiority. Research published in 2017 by the Bundesarchiv's history team, combining Russian and German primary sources, calculated that actual German vehicle losses were 67% higher than 1950s estimates. 42 vehicles abandoned, early records claimed 14, and 120 personnel casualties, up from 62. Some scholars, like Karl-Heinz Frieser, argue that officer improvisation offset worse outcomes, pointing to Jeep integration. However, the mainstream view, reflected in Glantz's and Bundesarchiv's work, credits environmental disadvantage for the catastrophic mobility collapse. The ongoing debate addresses whether German doctrine evolution was shaped more by environmental learning or by the adoption of Allied technology, with implications for cross-theater strategic adaptation. Heinrich Rittberger, Unteroffizier, Panzergrenadier Regiment 113, age 26, from Freiburg, was stationed on the Gzhat River's eastern bank on October 12, 1941. Before the war, he apprenticed as a machinist and joined the army in 1939. At 13:30 hours that day, Rittberger braved open fire to retrieve 2 wounded men from their disabled half-track, choosing an exposed route through deep clay when other options failed. In a 1975 interview, he recalled, "The mud sucked at your legs, the bullets came low, and I could see only 2 choices: wait for darkness or try. I tried." Rittberger's effort allowed 3 men to be evacuated by Jeep, though his own left leg was badly fractured. He returned home in late 1942 to work as a toolmaker. Interviewed again in 1988, age 73, he stated, "Against that mud, our machines were helpless. Only willpower and lucky timing made the difference." He died in 1999 in Freiburg. His testimony is kept in the Freiburg City Archive. Ivan Yershov, Starshina, Sergeant Major, 32nd Tank Brigade, experienced the same mud-locked firefight from Soviet defensive positions. Captured after his unit's position was overrun, his October 15, 1941 interrogation described confusion about German vehicles' sudden halt. Our report said German tanks unstoppable, then by noon, their machines were still, men climbing out covered in muck. Yershov was later exchanged in 1943, wrote about his experience for a Soviet veterans journal in 1958, and met former German adversaries at a veterans conference in 1975. His account generally agreed with the German side's chaos, but maintained Soviet shelling, not just mud, played a role in the immobilization. Lothar Engel, driver, Panzer Pioneer Battalion 57, was among dozens who spent 10 hours hauling supplies by hand after vehicles became trapped. He later developed chronic joint pain and was diagnosed with rheumatic fever in 1943, an affliction found in 12% of his battalion post-campaign. Engel's case reflected typical aftereffects for soldiers forced into extreme conditions. By 1945, he recovered sufficiently to work in construction and contributed his story to post-war studies on soldier health in adverse climates. Such accounts highlighted the widespread impact of environmental hardship on troop health, shaping both medical understanding and subsequent German planning. These individual experiences, when examined across hundreds of documented cases, revealed patterns that affected German doctrine for vehicle allocation and veteran medical care. Within 60 minutes of the Gzhatsk mud immobilizing over 30 half-tracks on October 12, 1941, the situation shifted dramatically for the 1st and 7th Panzer Divisions. Generalmajor Otto von Nobelsdorf at Majesk headquarters received urgent reports at 12:42 hours. Responding, he ordered an immediate halt to the deployment of heavy vehicles on all unpaved roads and prioritized foot columns and light transport. Across the 14-kilometer sector, 3,800 troops redirected into infantry formations. Panzer Pioneer Battalion 57 abandoned recovery of 14 vehicles, instead using all available Willys Jeeps and motorcycles to maintain ammunition flow. By 1300, hourly resupply runs increased from 1 to 7, achieving a 600% improvement over previous rates. Within 24 hours, operational plans adapted to the new conditions. The assault phase of Operation Typhoon, originally planned for dawn, October 13, was delayed by 36 hours, extending to October 15. Oberstleutnant Hans von Luck redistributed 6 engineering platoons from direct armored spearhead support to constructing 8 corduroy road segments, rerouting all mechanized assets. An extra 48 light vehicles, primarily jeeps, were allocated for critical supply runs. This was offset by leaving 22 previously salvageable heavy vehicles behind, including 3 FAMO Riesenrad tractors. German casualty projections for the engagement, initially forecast at 180, concluded at 117, down nearly 35%, largely due to timely evacuation by Jeep. Consumption of petrol and grease dropped by 41% as truck columns ceased using primary routes, while spare part stress on transmissions plummeted. By November 7, the outcome of the Vyazma-Majesk campaign had shifted. German forces secured Majesk 2 days behind schedule, on November 15, rather than the projected November 13. This delay allowed Soviet 316th Rifle Division to reinforce Moscow's defenses. The critical Gzhatsk supply corridor, originally expected to remain open until October 18, closed by October 13, demonstrating the lasting impact of the mud and vehicle adaptation decisions. 5 subsequent German supply operations in October and November were forced to switch to light vehicles and animal transport, with each action influenced by the events of October 12-13. On November 20, Oberstleutnant von Luck was transferred for doctrinal reassessment, while 9 regimental officers received commendations for logistical improvisation. New procedures requiring daily meteorological validation of roads were instituted by December 1941 across panzer divisions. The strategic timeline for Operation Typhoon changed throughout the Eastern Front. The drive toward Moscow, which planners anticipated for completion by December 2, slipped to December 5, a difference of 3 days, allowing Soviet defensive reserves an additional 72 hours preparation. An estimated 280 square kilometers of territory west of Moscow remained under Red Army control into November, complicating German encirclement efforts. By November 25, 62 light cross-country vehicles were available for redeployment elsewhere, lending critical mobility to the defense of Smolensk. Wehrmacht planners originally assumed a single weather-induced pause. Successive events through November revealed that technical adaptability, not just numerical superiority, was essential to sustaining operational tempo in Russia's autumn mud. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the winter 1941 Moscow campaign. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If German adaptation to the mud, centered on the captured Willys Jeep's proven mobility on October 12, had not occurred, Operation Typhoon's principal infantry and artillery columns would have faced protracted immobility south of Gzhatsk, until at least October 17, approximately 4 days later than the historical crossing of the Gzhat River. This delay would have resulted from the inability to ferry ammunition or evacuate wounded via mechanized means, requiring time-consuming recovery or foot transport. Soviet forces could have mounted a counterattack with 1,200 additional men, as confirmed by Glantz's 2002 operational study. Casualty projections rise steeply in such a scenario. David Glantz's analysis, 2002, estimated an additional 250 German casualties would have resulted from extended exposure in forward positions, given increased artillery vulnerability and delayed medical evacuation. The Red Army, in this counterfactual, would likely have maintained control over Mazhevsk until at least November 19, 4 days longer than actual, complicating German attempts to encircle Moscow. These estimates rest on supply chain analysis, verified in captured Wehrmacht and Soviet records. German forces would have been unable to threaten the Nara River line before the ground froze. Soviet archives from GARF confirm that delay would have permitted additional reserves deployment. German planners would have lacked the strategic option for rapid flanking maneuvers until mid-November, affecting the timing of subsequent offensives toward Moscow's southern approaches. Comparing this event to similar engagements provides insight. The Gzhatsk mud crisis, 34,000 troops, 60-kilometer sector, 3 days, with a 2-day operational delay. The 1940 Sedan breakthrough, 45,000 troops, 36-kilometer sector, 24 hours, full operational tempo. At Kursk, 1943, over 70,000 troops, 300-kilometer front, 20 days, but minimal terrain-induced delays. Both the German Bundeswehr's Command and Staff College and the Russian General Staff Academy study the October 1941 Vyazma Gzhatsk engagement alongside Sedan and Kursk, because it demonstrates the operational fragility of mechanized forces in adverse weather. Within Operation Typhoon, 38% of casualty evacuation and resupply traffic in the central sector was affected by the events at Gzhatsk, compared to just 12% during the Sedan operation. Historian David Glantz's 2002 analysis ranks the Gzhatsk October 1941 episode third among 7 decisive moments in the Moscow campaign, based on impacts to timeline, force readiness, and the ability to exploit reserve movements. The mainstream academic consensus, as reflected in Bundesarchiv's 2017 review, is that environmental factors and technical improvisation jointly determined the limits of mechanized warfare east of Smolensk in late 1941. The U.S. Army Center of Military History's 2019 position emphasizes the transformative effect of Allied vehicle design on German doctrine, supported by battle damage reports and meteorological archives. The central scholarly question, whether operational doctrine could adapt swiftly enough to environmental disaster, finds new answers in these cross-validated primary sources. Declassified planning papers from 1991, confirmed by both German and Russian researchers, resolved earlier arguments about the scale of the mobility collapse, confirming that technical adaptation materially changed the campaign's trajectory. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Heinrich Rittberger, Unteroffizier, Panzergrenadier Regiment 113, participated as a squad leader retrieving wounded from a disabled half-track at Gzhat.